Da 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 da. What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes, get those notifications out, let people know I've gone live. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And if you've hung out with me for any length of time, you're going, oh, Cindy's early tonight. Something must be up. Really, it is just a day that I am emotionally exhausted and physically exhausted. The seasons are changing in a lot of different aspects of my life. And I thought today maybe I would try to go to bed early. But I wanted to show up because I don't want that exhaustion to show in the content, in the message, if it so chooses to come out. I just might go right into a card. I might not. I might tell you a little bit about my day. Again, for those of you who have not been with me for very long, right? This could be the very first time you've happened upon my content. But I am somebody who, in the past half a dozen years, has really been working hard at clearing out some of the debris in a path that I'm not really sure in the direction. Well, I know the direction I'd like to go into, but we know life. Life is what happens to us while we're making other plans. And lots of times in that directive, right, things change. Grateful that I'm walking in a path in the creating of the best human being that I possibly can, that I have been privileged to make some choices. In other aspects of my life, I think maybe I've just been a little bit like thrown into the dryer and just kind of tumbling along, or set out to the ocean with my surfboard and I'm just riding the waves in whatever form they're coming at me, right? Sometimes it's on the teetering on the edge that we get the most insight, the most clarity as to what life is all about, right? Some of those ambitions and dreams and goals that we like for ourselves. Also, those same aspects for the people that are really, really close to us, right? Again, if you haven't been with me for long, my sister went in for a quadruple heart bypass. It was a big one, not just physically, but in emotionally and mentally, in that preparedness in doing something that she was, right. None of us are really big fans of hospitals and nurses and doctors unless they're good looking, right? But that was just a joke. But you know what I mean. Like, it's a terrifying aspect. We're usually not just going in to entertain ourselves. We're going in to do something crucial to our bodies or our mind to help us move a little bit better, right? Enjoy life a little bit better. Maybe just to exist a little bit longer. And, my sister was one of those people absolutely terrified of hospitals and doctors. It doesn't matter how much cheerleading, right? How much motivation and inspiration I threw at her. Believe me, I threw a little bit at her constantly. It drives her a little bit bonkers. But I think in the process of the past half a dozen years or so, she's come to an understanding, right? She knows my mind. She knows that I am headstrong and I will butt heads if I truly am inspired or if I truly believe in something. And I truly, for the most part of my life, I have been bumbling along, right? Like the bumper cars, just like everybody else, right? Riding those riding those waves, adapting and conquering, and lots of times just moving along in my life, just hoping that a wrench would not be thrown into it, right? Grateful for the lessons to recognize that I was the one who was probably the biggest instigator in what went wrong in my life. And, in stirring that pot, because I took a lot of people along for that ride, those people that stuck with me, those people that were trying to make me move in a direction that would be more comfortable for them. I come from a very dynamic family, but in this day and age, I am not in it by myself, right? I am not a unique in that. I would think that for most of us now, we have been mixing it up with different cultures and different religious and spiritual ideas, even different political ideas right within the own family. And that can cause such conflict, right? Again, in that butting heads. Lots of it is just in accepting in where we are, right? Doesn't mean that we stop moving. It doesn't mean we don't stop achieving and working towards those goals and those dreams for ourselves and the people that are close for us. But it just means accept where you are at in the moment, right? Trusting that it doesn't always have to be that way. We can make some choices. We all know we can make choices, right? We all know that, but we don't like to rock the boat because we know every choice we make, right, causes waves. It causes change to come into our life. But we're sitting in a season, and when I say a season, I'm just saying in a day and age where, we need to bring about some big change because we're this close to each other now. And because we've already started introducing that in the choices we're making and who we're marrying and the religions that are coming in and the political ideas that are coming in, even in the cultural and the traditional ideas, right? Again, we could be butting heads in that. But lots of us are accepting where we're at in the moment and in that respect of who it means more to, that lots of times that we can concede, right? My father was a religious man, or not a very spiritual man. My mother was very, very religious. My father would have nothing to do with the church, right? My mother would drag us off to Sunday school and churches. She was a Christian. She loved Jesus, but she didn't have a handle on the religion. I remember being a Episcopal, gospel, Jehovah Witness. I think she even tried the Scientology, which was kind of swinging a little bit towards some of the ideas that my dad moved in. But it was because of that word church, Church of Scientology, that she just went in just to check it out. We didn't stay there very long. I say we didn't stay there because she dragged us kids to every church that she went to. But again, she loved God, she loved Jesus, and she moved that way. But us kids, we went along with that. But something must have rubbed off on me because I bumped into characters that were very much like my father, very much like my father. And my curious mind and being that pit bull with a piece of raw meat in their mouth, right? I chomped onto that and come to realize that I was more like my father than I had ever been led to believe. But again, maybe that was in my choices because even as a kid, we had choices. And it was kind of a decision that my parents, I don't know whose idea it was, but they agreed between the two of them that we were going to be allowed to make as many choices for ourselves as we would like, or as much as we would like to introduce into our lives. But I was that person, right? I recognized every time I made a choice, change was coming into my life. And I also learned very fast that, if I swung more to my mother's choices, I'd be a little bit safer, right? Again, I come from a dynamic family, and lots of us do come from dynamic families, and it builds in us ideas and way of movement. And when I say way of movement, this is where we have, you know, generations and generations of doctors and lawyers, and right. And, it's amazing if we step into these professions out of love. I have people who follow my content, and they've been in the military one generation after the next, but it's always been in choice. It's been in the honor of it, in the respect of the per, profession. And not only that, the morals and the standards that are built in with that, like the true understanding about family and foundations of values that, if you were different, it takes all kinds to make the world. If you were different, that you would find a way to ride those waves, adapt and conquer, and be able to relate to other people. And this is absolutely amazing. But lots of times, right, the parents dictate, right, what religion a child is going to be, or what profession they are going to grow up to be, right? Um, and it's always for the good of the family. And lots of times it's even the idea that it's good for that child, but then that child doesn't get to learn about choices. They get to learn about dictation and projection and acceptance. And, when it comes to choices, right, those choices are put into somebody else's hands, and all they've got to do is follow. And that's, again, perfectly fine if that's what you want to do. If you don't want to be a leader, if you don't want to be a person of independence, or to be able to build a life that you dream for yourself, right? That you're just doing it to appease or to please somebody else. For me, little bit of butting head, but I'm grateful, that option to be able to make some of my own choices arrived in my life really, really early. I was my father's daughter. I didn't have any choice but to follow the household rules until I was out of that house. That meant no swearing. That meant growing up in that abundance of quotes that my dad loved to raise his family in. Also, in following my mother in all those churches, right? Hoping, she was hoping that, maybe one of her kids wanted to be a nun. There were lots of bishops and nuns in the history on her side of the family, going back to the 14th century, even an archbishop of Canterbury, really, really big one during the reign of Queen Elizabeth the First. Queen Elizabeth the First, yeah, the redheaded lady, right? The one who wore all the wigs and stuff. Yeah, so you know, uh, even in being baptized, that was left as a choice. None of us kids, and there's four girls in my family. My dad had daughters. He would have kept trying because he wanted a boy really bad. But my mother said that was it, cut him off that way. And yeah, so they ended up with four girls. But we all went to church. And again, it was my mother's dream that maybe one of the kids might want to go into the profession of religion, whether it was a nurse or even as somebody who was in the hierarchy of the church, even in the treasurer, the choir, even anything. But none of us were. None of us in the end ever became even religious. None of us go to church. None of us, right? By the time I was 12, 13, I was done with Sunday school. And it's not like I didn't love Sunday school. I loved Sunday school. I loved the storytelling of the Sunday school teachers. I loved the layman's Bible, where it's put into readable form in modern English. So I was able to understand even the Jehovah Witness books. The Jehovah Witness made beautiful picture storybooks that were so easy and interesting to read. And a lot of those stories were very similar to stories in the Bible, right? They had a little bit different ideas when it came to what really happened in the Bible, but right, I didn't really see the difference in it. And I just love the picture books. Like I really did. I didn't mind the Jehovah Witnesses too much. I didn't like knocking on doors and sitting in people's houses, right? Talking about religion. I was too really all of us girls were way too young for that. I think we were all under 10 years old, right? And we really shouldn't have been pulled in like that. But my mother, when she got into a church, she went in head first with every little bit of energy that she had. She right, even up into her death. When my father died, her soul just left her. She was an empty shell. Like, her soul just said, "See you later," and she was just lost, right? And she joined a church group and she was speaking in tongues. I feel so ashamed of this because we didn't understand us girls. We were um, not religious in any way. And because of the loss of my father, and because we could see the instant difference in her persona, because her soul literally in that instant just left. It was just gone. And my mother, I have to say, got sucked into this church. And my mother made good money, and she was asked to donate a good portion of her wage to this church. They sent her out on retreats constantly, which cost lots of money. My mother started speaking in tongues, and she became totally unrelatable to her girls, and we did everything we can. It took us a couple of years, but we took her out of that church. She gave that church up, and she didn't change in any way. She was still a shell of the person that she used to be, right? But she left that church, and if there was anything that I could go backwards in, I would give her that. I would not have done that to her, right? That wasn't my call. That was her choice. And we pretty much threatened her, right? That we would never speak to her again. She wouldn't see her grandkids. Like it was pretty brutal what we had to do in order to get her out of that church. But if I had the option to do that again, I would probably fight for her. And I think for the most part, being the oldest daughter, even though my sister Tracy was the matriarch of that family, I was the oldest. I would have put my foot down, and I was pretty good at convincing when I had to convince, and I wouldn't have allowed my sisters to do that to my mother. She found solace in that church, and she found friends and companionship in that church. She almost got married off again to somebody in that church, and I think that was kind of something that was kind of swung it so that made it a little bit easier for us to get out of that church. Okay, so we're just getting too far down the side branches now. So let's just bring it right back to the main branch. It is in our choices that bring about change. But most of us, we don't want to make those choices because we know the moment we make that decision, the moment you set that goal, right? You've set that set of dominoes into motion. Yesterday, I found out there was a possibility. I, if you don't know, again, I go on these. I explore the inside and the outside, but part of exploring the outside is actually getting out and taking these trips every fall. I always choose fall because the bugs are gone, the temperature is beautiful, and the colors of the trees and the forest, especially when you go up into the mountains, is absolutely gorgeous. Plus, that busy of the provincial parks has slowed down quite a bit. Quite often, I'll get a provincial park for my entire self with no other campers, and it has happened to me before. It happened to me, I think, last year in one of my parks that I didn't even see a soul, and they were the most beautiful camping spots too. Charbot Lake. I remember that lake. Oh, it was so absolute gorgeous and I'm looking at property around that area. But I am in the top 10 provincial park reviewers on Google Maps. And so every year when I go on these trips, um, I work on my Google Maps in photographs and in reviews, even in the coffee stops and the rest stops and right. So I take it seriously, and it's my little bit of contribution in a way that I can in that little drummer girl way because Google has been so kind to me. Has brought me along and I've allowed myself to be pulled into that community. But it's been in my choices to stick around. It's in my determination and my consistency in showing up. And my brand has pivoted and it has changed. And it has changed because I made those choices. So I know. Right? And it's scary. It took me over a year to even come in front of the camera, but I made that choice to do whatever I had to do to keep my brand going. And in that process, not only did my brand change, I changed, right? But I give back to Google in my little ways. And part of it is in my contribution to Google Maps and right following the rules, right? Because Google and YouTube, they have set policies that they have to adhere to. And in passing that down as a content creator, we have to abide by that, right? And, I'm very grateful. I've never had a strike or anything. And I've been on YouTube for 10 years. And I've actually been 6 days a week for, oh my goodness, years now, right? I think I came back to YouTube because I was practicing my craft on Instagram. I was still on YouTube once a week, but I was on Instagram 5 days a week or 6 days a week. And then just recently, I gave myself Saturdays off because, a day of rest. It is important because I am creating the best human being I possibly can. I'm not just creating the best YouTube creator I possibly can. I'm not just creating, right, the daughter of my father who loved spirituality, right? I'm such a realist. I'm kind of a Peter Jordison kind of girl. I am in a life that is so solid and so cemented in being human, and that includes going up and going down in my movement, right? And I understand that, change is going to come because I dictate that change. Because, right, once you're feeling comfortable, That's your signal to get uncomfortable again. Okay, so let's get back to this trip that I take in September this year, right? I made some choices, right? I was around some people that were really right. In my lessons, I come to understand that I shouldn't be there, but there were so many aspects of that job that I absolutely just love. But there were people there that were just brutal when it came to my comfortableness. And their comfortableness in the end, right? Because I tried to keep that optimistic, cheery mood all through the process. But once I saw that my life as a human was suffering in that, and that I was not taking in the lessons, I was just butting heads with others. I could take it, right? And not recognizing it's right. Cindy is not coming back, but I believe there are parts of me that will be coming back, and those lessons sometimes are not just for me, right? And in that partnership that I have with myself, I should have left that job at least a year earlier. I should have, but I didn't listen. And, in rectifying that situation, I made some hard choices, some quick choices in the moment. And I was proud of myself at the moment because I had a little bit of money put off to the side. I accumulated so much that I've been selling things, and keeping the household going on. We'll get back to that in a second. But after a few months, I've noticed I'm not struggling. I'm not able to spend money like I used to be able to spend money. But I have made some serious movement in the past few months, like crazy movement, like more movement than maybe if I had combined 2 years of movement that I had done previously. Now, when I was working, I tried really hard not to let the job and the other aspects of my life to take away from the lesson. So I was still applying myself, but not like I've been doing in the past couple of, well, more than a couple, probably 4 months that I've just been going hard and really gobbling up, really loving what I'm doing, and really seeing the evidence, right, in myself and in what I'm capable of bringing to my brand now, right? Because before I would be like, oh my goodness, Cindy, you're such a realist. If you talk about these things, nobody's going to understand it. And, right, they're going to think you're funny or kooky or, right? But again, once you get comfortable with things, you're able and should make a choice to bring more onto board because you're capable of more now, right? You're comfortable. You got that down packed. You got that inside out, and you just don't want to be the same. You always want to be moving. You always want to be expanding. But I dug myself a little bit of a hole. I was a little heartbroken. I never even talked about it for the past 2 months because I didn't think there was any possible way that this fall I would be able to take my trip. My trip was that stick with the bag at the end. It was my reward for all the good and hard work that I put into myself and put into my brand and what I brought to the table and what I can bring to the table in the future, right? And this year I didn't think I could do that. And in a conversation with my sister, I had to take a withdrawal out of the few funds that I thought I had in order to pay my bills, my house bills. Uh, right? I owe a few $100s. I don't have a lot of bills, but I have a few $100 I needed to take out a withdrawal, and that made it for sure I wouldn't be able to go on my trip. Well, it turns out that I had a little bit more than what I thought. And because I achieved one of my goals for this year, right, getting all the dental work done, which happened to be at twice as much as what I had budgeted for this year to get done, that I had gotten that off of my goal list. And again, that was something I thought I would never, ever be able to accomplish. And I was just kind of, right, oh my goodness, I did it again. Repeat, failure, loser, zero, right? But with those tools around my belt, with all those extra lessons and being the pit bull with the boots of raw meat on my mouth, I was able to pull myself out of it right away, knowing that once you're in the negative, right, you're just leaving a portal open for more negativity. And in that negativity, it rubs off on everybody around you. It was one of the reasons I had to quit my job because, right, no fault to themselves, but right, life is what happens to you while you're making other plans. And if you don't have those tools, how to keep your head above the water, how to find the best in the worst. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. To be able to smile in the heartbreak, right? To be able to be cheery, right? When you know that you're not going to be able to take your holiday this year, right? And feeling guilty for even thinking that there was a possibility because my sister went in for a quadruple heart bypass. It only ended up being a triple heart bypass, but she was so scared. She made herself so sick. We didn't even think she was going to make it. And in truth, she code blue 3 times. Is that the code? They call it code 1 when it happens at home. Code blue if it's in the hospital. But 3 times she almost died just in this past year. And I have no idea why they didn't figure it out because it was the exact same thing that killed my father. My father had congenital heart failure. It should have been the first thing they checked into, but they didn't, right? For what reasons, I don't know. But I'm grateful, super grateful. And those have been in the lessons all week and everywhere as I look in every experience, every conversation, every card that I pull, it pops up there in gratefulness. I even think we have pulled it this week as a topic to go into. Um, but the operation is over. Such a relief, right? And I've been at the hospital every day except for yesterday because she specifically told me not to come by. But I was there all through the surgery. I was there every single day. Today I went to the hospital. She looked so good. She had her energy back. She stole my coffee. I bought coffee. She just stole it off of me, right? I didn't realize that she'd be able to drink a cup of coffee, so I didn't bring her one, but I brought a little coffee for myself, and I brought her a little diet drink because she has diabetes and she can't have sugar, right? But she looked so good and she had so much energy. And I left there feeling so good that at that moment I knew that that was the perfect time to do something that was hard for me, and that was to ask my sister, how much money do I have in the kitty? Because we partner in reselling. We resell things and we make a little bit of profit. And that's what I've been doing to keep groceries in the cupboard and to keep my household going, right? Didn't quite did it. Went a little bit backwards in it. And I had to dip into that kitty. And I just wanted to know, right? Maybe I can get some groceries too or something. Well, it turned out I had quite a bit of money in that kitty. Not as much as I did last year, but my sister graciously offered, well, I asked her, and she's giving me the car while she goes to Disneyland on September 14th. and I'm taking my holidays this year. I'm not doing 12 provincial parks. I'm only doing 3 different provincial parks and maybe visit a couple of parks in between there. Um, but I get to do my filming. I get to do my reviews and my photos on Google Maps. I'm taking in 3 parks that I haven't been to yet, so I'm pretty excited about that. I have my campsites. I had picked them out months ago, but I had resigned myself that I wasn't going to get to go, so I went in to see if they were still available. Thank goodness most of those campsites that I really liked are available, so I just have to make my final choices. I picked 2 of the best ones from each one of those campgrounds, and I'll make my final choice um, when I go to pay for my campsites. Um, Not only that, I have enough for paying my bills and put a little bit extra on, knowing that I've got some money coming in uh, for the next set of bills, and if I have to go back to work, I'll go back to work. I'm not afraid of work, right? I am close to retirement. It would have been amazing if I could say I retired early, but if that's not in the cards, that's not in the cards. And like I said, I'm not afraid of hard work. So the trip was on, and I said, "Okay, Cindy, now you gotta buckle down because yes, you'll have enough money for the campground. You have a vehicle and you have your all your equipment, but you're still going to need some groceries and you're still going to need, a little bit of money because I'm going to go digging for crystals. You guys know I love digging for crystals. I go every single every single year. So I'm going to need a few dollars for that, and I got to make sure that I make arrangements for my cat because this year, right, my sister's not going to take care of my cat because she's going to be in Disneyland. So I'm going to just kind of see if I could ring a deal with one of my brother in laws because he's really sweet and he loves my cat, and see if maybe he'll babysit my cat. Okay. It just seemed everything was just click, click. This has all been going on for like 24 hours and everything's just going click, 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 click. So I got home from the hospital today. I walked home. I was tired from walking there and walking back. And I sat at my desk with a cup of coffee, ready to get into the lessons. And a lady phoned me, and I had a purse up for sale. I paid like $5 for it with my little staff discount. And I had it up for sale for $70. It was a really nice brand purse, and it was in like brand new condition. And she bought the purse, $70. So I got this trip going on. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, okay, it has to go for the trip. Am I going to start buying groceries? And I thought, no, I'm not buying groceries yet because I'll just eat them out of the nervousness and the stress of putting this holiday together. So we're not going to do it on groceries. But what if we take care of the cat's needs, right? So I took my trolley. I walked all the way to the mall, right, with the trolley, and I put 2 20-pound boxes of cat litter on that trolley. And then there were such good deals on cat food and her treats. So I just got everything for right. So my brother-in-law decides to take the cat. He's got a fresh box of cat litter. He's got a fresh bag of cat food. He's got the cat treats for her. Her eyes just popped open when I say that word. She's just like a dog that way. And the only thing I need is to buy a fresh cat litter box. Cost me a few dollars. But I used that money to do that. And then I came home and I had $20 left over. And I said, oh my goodness, right? The stress and the busy and parting with that money, right? Even though, right, the cat stuff is expensive. That was like $30 I dished out. Oh, more than that because I bought 2 boxes, 1 box for right now. And I could have done just the grocery store over here, but I haven't been happy with their cat litter. And there was a certain brand, and I know you can get it at Walmart. So I walked to the Walmart to get it, and then I hauled it all the way. I was so thirsty. I went to McDonald's for a diet drink, and then I went to the bus, and there were these two boxes on top, two 20-pound boxes sitting on top of each other on my trolley. And as soon as I got on the bus, they both fell over to the ground. Oh my goodness, I was so embarrassed. So it was kind. Another passenger grabbed my trolley, and I grabbed the two cat litter boxes like I'm Anatoly. He's a bodybuilder. He's pretty famous on the Instagram. I absolutely love him. But anyway, I grabbed these two big boxes of cat litter, and I got onto the bus, and I thanked the bus driver for waiting for me in my clumsiness. And yeah, I went home, and when I got home, I said, "Oh my goodness, I need a treat. I just I need a treat." So what did I do? I walked to my grocery store. It's only a few blocks away, and I truly intended on getting some pastry today, and I haven't had any pastry and any bread now for 2 months, and I was determined. My nerves were shot. Right, I'm in that mode, and right, my body is screaming sugar, sugar, and big tin of coffees. I only had $20 left after I sold this purse. I had $20 left. And big big tins of coffee were on sale for $19. They're up to like $30 right now because of the tariffs with the states and stuff. They're looking at these big tins of coffee. They're going to be $40. And I says, "Whoa, when I go camping, I'm going to need my coffee for sure. I won't be happy with just tea bags." So I said, "Let's spend this $20. You're not getting a treat, Cindy. You're going to buy that big tin of coffee, and that'll be enough to get you by for the month." And I'm leaving on this trip in 3 weeks, you guys. On the 14th, I am gone for a week. I am so excited, but at the same time, I've got to make it happen, and it's going to be in my choices, right? That this is going to happen because there's still lots that I've gotta get done, right? And right, lots of the stuff does cost money. I still have the groceries, but now that I know that I'm going on this trip for sure, I'm just going to do like I did last year. Every time I go to the grocery store, I have a set rule. We're getting something for the trip. So I was so proud of myself that I didn't break down and buy the pastry today or the cookies or whatever treat that I was going to get, that I actually bought that big tin of coffee. I'm set for coffee for the month, and I'm set for my trip. And the cat stuff is taken care of. And that was an expensive one. That was $50 I spent on that cat today, right? And she's my cat. I love her to death. But to come up with that $50 somewhere's down the road where I'm just looking to sell my things, how do I make some money, right? And I want to be able to do it on my own, right? That's part of what I do, is being the evidence for others that it can be done. I'm considered low income, but I have made so much movement for myself, and that served me in the time that I was making that movement. But if I play my cards right, that movement is going to be the evidence for others. And I'm going to bring that to the table, right? And it's going to be amazing because I'm not afraid to make those choices now, right? Those choices that lots of people are afraid to make because they know when they make choices, change happens. But in being able to make choices, if you're not afraid of hard work, if you're not afraid of problem solving, if you're not afraid of making the right decision, right? Like me at the grocery store getting that tin of coffee instead of pastry, right? Or me taking that walk. And I got so much exercise in today, right? Plus being at the hospital, and I'm not a big fan of hospitals either. They drain me. If you're highly sensitive and empathic, you just feel that. It's like going into the horror house in all honesty. But my sister needed that good cheer today, right? And I represented and I wanted to represent. And it was an opportunity to slip in a book about stress and love and gratefulness. A couple of books. A couple of books, right? But she's crashed so hard because as long as I've been on this journey, her life has been crashing, like so crashing. She hit the pavement. There was no further down that she could go except not be here anymore. That's how serious it was. And it's going to be in her choices that she'll be able to make some movement for herself, right? And I'm not sure, right, if she'll be willing, because lots of us are not leaders. My sister is a leader, but she's been put through the ringer. Lots of us get put through the ringer, but some of us just keep going, whether that's stupidity or, right, just having that inkling or that foresight that it's beneficial. And that's how I look at it, right? Because I'm that evidence, and I hope that I can be that evidence for my sister and she can make a little bit of movement for herself. But right, I'm not pushing her on that. I can only dictate my own life in the creation of the best human being I possibly can. My sister's a pretty amazing human being, but there's always room for improvement. And I think the world really does need my sister. They need all my sisters in all truth. But who's to say that it'll even be in this lifetime? Like I said, Cindy's not coming back, but those other parts of me are coming back, right? And I believe that me and my family, we've all been traveling together for lifetimes, lifetimes, lifetimes. And yet, right, we don't all see eye to eye. We don't all mean well. There's a lot of jealousy and resentment and narcissism and borderline and, right, broken empaths, because that's what I was. I was a broken empath, and by the grace of whoever or whatever, right? I've been invited to the party and I'm so grateful. And there's that word. I want to be using it because it's made a lot of movement in my life and it has kept me company in that process, or it has allowed whoever or whatever to keep company with me in that process, in those choices that I've made. And who's to say if any of those choices, and they are manifesting, but all of those choices, all of those goals, all of those dreams that I set out for, right? I have to remember I'm making choices for myself, but it's only in me paying attention that I'll be able to make the choices that those other parts of me want to make. And that's got to be the same. And that's the only fair way to do that, even with my sisters. And if none of my sisters wake up in this lifetime, right, their souls might not wake up to any of these ideas, or maybe they do, but because they can't get through, right, that maybe in the next lifetime, right, that maybe like my father being the evidence for me, that I could be the evidence for my sisters. So when the right moment hits and they can wake up to their own creation of the best human being they possibly can, they have a little bit of reference points. So I guess tonight's podcast is about choices, right? Yes, change also, but change doesn't happen without those choices that we make. And we have to for our goals, our dreams. Oh my goodness, I get to go on my trip in 3 weeks. And I just found out yesterday. I'm so excited. I got so much planning to do. I'm going to bring out all my camping gear uh, in one more week. Last week, I pulled it out in 3 weeks. My living room was just a disaster with all my gear sitting in it for 3 weeks. I said this week, two weeks before, and I can bring all my Rubbermaid containers out, pack them and just decide what I want to keep. And this year, I'm not renting a fancy car, though I'm taking my sister's little VW, right, that she just bought. She's let me take in it. I'm taking my pop up tent this year, and it's going to be amazing. So I've got something to keep myself busy on my walks, in my lessons. Sometimes, the lessons are just kind of blah. I don't want any of it. And, right. So I just sit here and I'll pull a card for myself and I'll contemplate on that card for a moment. And then sometimes I'll just sit here with nothing going on. I'm just looking out my big picture window at the weather, or I'm playing with my cat, or I'm doing housework and stuff, but always, right? Always in the contemplation, and hopefully, right, that I'm feeling it now, right? And catching myself in what I might sway on the wrong path, like today, right? Heading specifically to the grocery store to get some kind of pastry. I didn't know what kind. I was going to let myself be inspired by the whipping cream and the filling and the sprinkles or whatever it was, right? And then just saw I had $20. I was going to just blow the whole thing, right, on something amazing. If it was going to be a whole cake or a whole pie, I would have done that, right? I would have gifted myself for working so hard. And I'm physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted right now. That's why I came into my life a little bit early, because I didn't want to have nothing left, right? And I didn't know what I was going to talk about it, but usually that's the way it goes with me. I come in and it just flows, and there's always a lesson in there, right? And whether it's for anybody else, that's not my choice, right? Because I can only make the choices for myself, and that's the truth. And I just have to be a little bit better, right? That I'm not waiting a year when it's just always budding with me. Do this, Cindy. You shouldn't be around that, Cindy. You know better, Cindy. Right? Just saying, oh, I'm tough. I can do this. Nobody's taking me down, but. It was so amazing. A day full of lessons, a day full of movement. The cat is taken care of during the holidays. Everything's fresh in that. I'm not going to have to worry about it. I got a good brand of cat litter. Oh my goodness. Right? I was thinking about it this afternoon, because lots of times you look at the prices, like when you go to a restaurant, like the same restaurant you've been going to all your life, and you look at the price of the things now and you go, oh my goodness. Like, I used to be able to get this burger for 50 cents when I was a kid, and now it's like $5 or $6, whatever it is. But it's been the same price maybe for 10 years, but that product, even though the price has not gone down, the size of it is. So a burger that was like this, right? When you were 15 years old is now like this, and the price is tenfold, right? So yeah, choices. That's what this live podcast is going to be tonight. Shall we pull a card? Even though I know I'm going to title it Choices. Yes, I think I will. Maybe it will relate to it. I'm being called to it. So let's just do that. If you've never hung out with me, these are just 54 powerful words, right? And it took me over a year because I worked with each word for an entire week, looking at it in different perspectives. And still, when I pull the card, I pull up a new perception of it, right? Not necessarily a perspective, because a perspective is the belief, right? The perception is the lessons, is the understandings that get you to that perspective, to that belief. Okay, you guys. And actually, I had that word today come across my path in a definition, and it was a totally different definition than what I used for it. I should have saved it, right? Because it was pertinent, not pertinent enough that I took it on as a perspective, but maybe I could have, if I had remembered what it was all about, because I don't remember now, I didn't write it down, that it's a perception that probably will not manifest into a perception unless it happens to come across my path again. Okay, you guys, let's just do this card. This one's sticking out here, so let's just take this one. It's so good. This is so perfect for tonight. This is how I came in to making choices. Look at you guys. Goals are the choices that just have to happen. What were the chances of that? Right? It's always working out for me that way. But this is how I came in. I came into these ideas through mindset. And thank goodness for the mindset, like, law of attraction. Because I am non denominational. Remember what I said? My dad, I am my father's daughter. I kind of swing that way. The lessons kind of come at me that way. But I am such a realist, right? For me, it's setting goals, setting those goals. I got the teeth done. I'm taking my trip this year. All I need to do to finish this year's goals is to get my new desktop, right? My desktop is a Windows 10. It needs to go. I got no more RAM left on it. I've used it all, right? So it needs to be replaced. I'm grateful for the amazing laptop that I have, but right, I need my PC. I do. I love having both. Okay, you guys, goals are the choices that just have to happen. Can you make a choice today, knowing that change is going to come back? It's going right. It's going to come about. You're not gonna. You don't get a say in it. You can't just make a choice and everything stays the same. When you make a choice, change always comes into your life. Always. It always does. And it's just in our choices again, whether or not to stick with it or not. Like a diet. Do you stick to the diet, or you go on the diet for a week and then you go back to your old ways, right? You can't achieve your goals, right? On a diet, you set your mind to losing 20 pounds and you go off your diet, right? You're not going to lose that 20 pounds. But if you make that choice, right, and you stand by that and you ride those waves and you never give up and you find a way, you can make it happen. You just watch me. I'll be on my holidays in 3 weeks and it's going to be absolutely amazing. You guys, that was a good card to pull tonight. And it was sticking out too. It was just saying, take me, take me. You guys, that's my podcast tonight. Everybody, have a great night. If you're just starting your day, I hope it starts amazing and I hope it ends just as amazingly. It's all going to be in your choices. Have a great night and we'll see you tomorrow.